Queen Ceres Valthera sat alone on the observation deck of her flagship, staring at stars that once represented her people's dominion and now reflected only the cost of survival. The Valtherian War was over. 3 years of conflict ended not in victory but in devastating stalemate. The treaty was signed. Her advisors celebrated diplomatic success, but Ceres could only see faces she'd failed to save, decisions that still woke her screaming. 60 million luminari dead, entire star systems uninhabitable, a generation orphaned. In luminari culture, royalty didn't show weakness. A queen grieved in private, maintained composure in public, carried her people's burdens without complaint. Ceres had performed this duty flawlessly for 3 years, attending memorials with perfect dignity, delivering speeches about sacrifice and honor. But tonight, alone beneath the stars, that facade finally cracked. Her tears fell, not dignified royal mourning, but broken sobbing of someone who'd held too much for too long. Each tear caught the starlight, shimmering like tiny captured stars falling from her luminous eyes. Her long ears dimmed to near darkness, the luminary sign of profound despair. She didn't hear the door open, didn't notice the presence until a quiet voice spoke. "Your Majesty, I thought you might want company, or if you prefer solitude, I can leave." Ambassador David Chen, the human diplomat who'd served as liaison throughout the peace negotiations. Ceres's first instinct was to compose herself, to resume the mask of royal strength, but she was too exhausted, too broken. "I should not be seen like this," she managed through tears. "A queen does not." "A queen is also a person," David said gently, "and people are allowed to grieve." He didn't approach, didn't invade her space or pressure her. He simply took a seat near the observation window, several meters away, and sat in quiet parallel to her pain. The silence stretched between them, not awkward, but comfortable in its lack of expectation. David didn't try to console or advise, didn't offer platitudes about time healing or sacrifice having meaning. He just existed beside her, present without being intrusive. Ceres cried, truly, deeply cried, for the first time since ascending to the throne. For her mother who died believing her daughter could save their people. For admirals and soldiers who followed her orders into battles they didn't survive. For civilians on colonies she'd abandoned because defending them would have cost more lives. Her tears shimmered in starlight, tiny luminous droplets that seemed to contain fragments of stars themselves. Luminary poets called it weeping starlight, making grief itself beautiful. But Ceres felt no beauty, only pain. After a time, minutes or hours, she couldn't tell, David spoke quietly. "I lost my sister in a war, years ago. She was a medic, killed trying to evacuate wounded from a field hospital during bombardment." Ceres turned to look at him, her luminous tears still falling. "I am sorry, I did not know." "Why would you? It's not in my diplomatic profile. But I tell you because I know what it's like to carry responsibility for deaths you couldn't prevent. I could have used family connections to keep her in safer assignments. I didn't because she wanted to help where help was most needed. And she died for that choice, my choice to let her go." He paused. "For years, I convinced myself that if I just made different decisions, she'd still be alive." It took a long time to understand that carrying that guilt forever wasn't honoring her memory. It was refusing to accept that sometimes, despite our best efforts, people we love die in ways we can't prevent. Ceres's long ears lifted slightly, the first sign of emotional response beyond despair. "How did you continue, after such loss?" "Honestly, some days I didn't. Some days I just existed. But eventually, I realized my sister didn't sacrifice herself so I could spend my life drowning in guilt. She wanted to save lives, so I try to honor that by doing the same. Diplomatic work instead of medical, but the goal is the same." He turned to meet her eyes. "I'm not suggesting you stop grieving. Grief is how we honor what we've lost. But Your Majesty, you saved billions of luminari by making impossible choices. The people who died would have died regardless, but the ones who lived, they lived because you had the courage to decide. That does not absolve me." "No, it doesn't. You'll carry that weight forever. But you don't have to carry it alone, and you don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt." His words cracked something in Ceres's carefully constructed composure. "My people need me to be strong. If they see their queen broken, they'll see their queen is as mortal as they are, that she feels the same pain they feel. Your people don't need an untouchable symbol. They need to know their leader understands their suffering because she shares it. They sat in silence again, but this time different. Less isolation, more communion. Saris continued to weep, her tears catching starlight, her long ears gradually brightening from near darkness to soft, dim glow that suggested the first stirrings of hope beneath despair. David told her about peace negotiations from his perspective, not diplomatic strategies, but moments when he saw both sides struggling with the same grief, the same exhaustion. During the final session, your Admiral Kess broke protocol. Just stopped mid-argument and said, "How many more have to die before we admit neither side can win?" That moment of raw honesty changed everything. Saris remembered that session, remembered the shock of hearing her decorated military leader admit exhaustion, remembered her relief at finally having permission to seek peace. "Admiral Kess lost 3 children in the war," she said quietly. When he spoke those words, I knew he wasn't surrendering. He was refusing to let any more parents experience what he had. "That's courage," David said, "real courage. Not charging into battle, but admitting when the fighting has cost too much." They talked through the night, not about strategy, but about grief and guilt and the impossible weight of leadership. Saris learned that David volunteered for this position specifically because he understood what it meant to make decisions in war. David learned that Saris ascended barely trained for peacetime rule, that she'd studied art and philosophy, dreamed of cultural exchange, and instead became a war leader. "I wanted to build bridges," Saris admitted, "to expand our cultural programs. Instead, I became a war leader, and now I don't know if I can be anything else." "You haven't lost her," David said with quiet certainty. "She's just buried under 3 years of survival mode, but she's still there. The fact that you're grieving proves it." For the first time since the tears began, Saris felt something other than despair. Not happiness, far from that, but a small recognition that maybe David was right. As dawn approached, artificial aboard ship, Saris's tears finally slowed. Her long ears had brightened to normal luminescence, though still dimmed by grief. "I have not thanked you," she said, "for staying, for not trying to fix what cannot be fixed, for simply being present." David stood, preparing to leave. "Your Majesty, you don't need to thank me for doing what anyone with compassion would do. But if you ever need to not be the queen, just to be Saris, my door is always open. No judgment, just space to be human, or, well, luminary." Despite everything, Saris almost smiled. "I understand." The following months tested Saris's ability to lead her people through peace. Rebuilding was slow, painful, complicated by grief permeating every level of society. Memorial services became regular occurrences. Economic reconstruction required decisions almost as difficult as wartime triage. But now, she had something she didn't before. Someone who knew she wasn't just a symbol. David continued diplomatic work, facilitating post-war recovery. Officially, his relationship with Queen Saris was purely professional. Unofficially, they developed friendship built on that night beneath the stars. They met occasionally in the observation deck, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence, always with the understanding that Saris could be vulnerable here without diminishing her authority elsewhere. One evening, after a particularly difficult week, she found David already there. "Rough day?" he asked without preamble. Saris's laugh was bitter. "Rough year, but yes, particularly today." She joined him at the window. "Sometimes I wonder if I should have continued fighting. If peace was the right choice or just the choice I could live with. Do you actually believe that, or are you testing whether I'll validate the doubt?" "Both, perhaps." Then honest answer. "You saved your people. The war was killing them, not just physically, but spiritually. Another year would have left survivors too broken to rebuild. You ended it when you still had a civilization left to save. Wisdom that cost 60 million lives. No, the war cost 60 million lives. Your wisdom prevented it from costing hundreds of millions more." Gradually, through these conversations, Saris began accepting what David had been showing her. That strength and vulnerability weren't opposites, that admitting pain didn't negate courage. She began incorporating this into her public role. At memorials, instead of just formal speeches, she shared genuine emotion, her voice breaking, her tears visible. Her advisors worried this showed weakness. Instead, it created profound connection. Luminary citizens who felt isolated in grief found solidarity in their queens, shared pain. A year after the war's end, on the treaty anniversary, Ceres gave a speech that defined her reign. We did not win this war. We survived it. Every one of us survived by carrying each other's burdens. 60 million of our people fell. I will carry their memory until my final breath, and I ask you to do the same. Not with guilt, but with determination to build a future worthy of their sacrifice. She paused. A year ago I wept for our losses. I still weep. But I have learned that tears do not diminish strength. They affirm our capacity to care deeply. So I do not apologize for grieving. Instead, I invite you to grieve with me, and then to rise with me. The speech resonated across the empire and beyond, celebrated as a new model of leadership that acknowledged pain instead of hiding it. Years later, historians pointed to Queen Ceres's evolution as key to luminary recovery. And in private, Ceres credited the human ambassador who refused to leave her side. He didn't try to fix me, she told those closest to her. He just stayed. That simple gift, being seen in my pain without being diminished by it, taught me more about leadership than any royal training. On the 5-year anniversary, at a joint memorial between species, Ceres and David stood at an observation deck together. 5 years, Ceres said quietly. Some days it feels like yesterday. That's grief, it doesn't follow schedules. Some days you carry it lightly, some days it drowns you, both are okay. Ceres's long ears glowed with soft, peaceful luminescence. Thank you, for that night, for teaching me that strength and vulnerability can coexist. Thank you for trusting me with your pain. They stood in companionable silence, watching stars that once reflected only loss but now also held promise. In luminary poetry, there's a concept. Starlight communion, the bond formed when souls witness each other's deepest pain and respond with presence rather than solutions. What they shared wasn't romance or grand drama. It was something more fundamental. The recognition that sometimes, the most powerful gift is simply refusing to leave someone alone in darkness. When historians asked Queen Ceres to identify the moment she began truly healing, she always pointed to that night. My tears shone like stars, grief made visible,